Question.
So in one of your last videos, you were talking about this essay, Borges and I, and when I was going through it, it felt to me more like speculation uh, than anything else. So, but when I listen to Krishnamurti or someone else, it feels more like directional, like something that I should be like serious about and explore. And I don't feel the same way with Borges and I, with Borges stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Borges, uh, Jorge Luis Borges is an extraordinary writer from Argentina. Uh, he lived in the 20th century, and he'll be known in the future as one of the great writers of the 20th century. He's a man who lived alone his entire life, or at home, right? I don't think he ever married, anything like that. But he was obsessed with the deep questions in life, philosophical questions, and he was a reader. And there are many things extraordinary about Borges, but as he was going blind, they made him they put him in charge of the National Library, which just shows you something about the world, right? So he's like Beethoven and went deaf even though he was a great composer. Borges, who was going blind, was probably one of the greatest readers, certainly I've ever encountered. So he studied philosophers. He studied philosophy. He studied uh, Leibniz. He just read, and he was a very very extraordinary thinker. He was not a Dharma teacher, and I'm not sure I mean, although he lived on a plane, and you can often see it, both quite sometimes quite elevated, sometimes quite down to the ground. He's a fiction writer, and he pointed out though that so much of what we call nonfiction is fiction, and oftentimes through fiction you get to deeper human truths. And so it's only in that spirit that I recommend Borges, not as literal scripture or on the same. It's not the same as, say, for example, Idris Shah. He's more of a poet, let's say, a novelist, an essayist, but of phantasmagoric fictions and detective stories and things like that. So, good question. Borges is of a different ilk altogether. It's kind of to the side. It's like in this work, as we enjoy nature, we also inherently enjoy great art, whether it be visual or literary or mathematical. You know, beauty is beauty, right? And so anything that comes close to that is attractive to seekers. And so, thanks for that question. Follow up?
Mhm. Yeah. So now when I read his stuff, what should be my approach? Should I treat it as something like poetic and just like wonder about,
Yes,
or
yes. It's for your
is it
enjoyment. It's really for your enjoyment.
okay? Okay, got it.
The Spanish Sufis penetrated South America as they did Mexico. And so they had a deep influence on each other, right? Especially in South America and also in Mexico and no doubt Central America. And so you can notice these things. Now his teacher, the great Fernando Macedonio, uh, who's virtually unknown, uh, that guy was amazing. You gotta imagine Borges' teacher, and so I recommend that book by. Well, he wrote several books. This one was published after he died. It's called The Museum of Eternal Novels. The best novel since It and the World Began. That's what it says on the title. The best novel since It and the World Began. So I recommend that highly too. But this is later. This is more of an old man's, uh, or older man's enjoyments in life. There's so many things in life you can't enjoy until you get older, and this is probably one of them. Okay. Next question.
Okay. Yep. Should you will you say question or should I just
Questions. Yes.
ask? Okay. Yeah. So the next question is about your last video on attunement. So as I listen to it about like what is attunement, it seems to be something like that involved when working with the flow or working in the flow, and it seems that forcing things doesn't work. and things like that. Is that right, or can you elaborate on that?
The construct of attunement came out of my work with mothers who were having difficulties with children as a child psychiatrist, and children that were having difficulties with mothers. But this actually started with infants, and because the the mother-infant relationship is actually a perfect example of attunement, both with the way and with each other. So a mother who has a normal mother who has a child who's healthy and who's interacting with that child doesn't have to worry about what other people think, doesn't have to read any books, doesn't have to think, well, there's no mind there. There's just love between her. They're bonding, they're imprinting, they're forming, they're attuning with each other. And so in the early relationship between a healthy mother and a healthy child, there's natural attunement, which is a reciprocal relationship, as opposed to one of them be attached to the other, or one of them obsessing about the other, or anything like that. So from that paradigm, the most natural thing in the world and one of the most powerful forces in the world, the attunement, or the love of a mother for her infant child. And we see it all over the animal kingdom too, by the way. That attunement is like the attunement that one has when one drops all the mental constructs and all these useless thoughts and attunes with what is, with reality. Now, if you're in nature, it's much easier because nature is all attunement. There's nothing, everything is in its place. Everything is playing its role, and it does it perfectly, and it doesn't get all complicated about it. The grass grows, the cheetah hunts, the gazelle runs, the birds fly, the water flows, the moon comes up, and the sun goes down. It's all there's nothing need to be done or thought about. And so attunement then is a word for being aligned with what is. And so it's both, actually. Attunement with the way is the same thing as attuning with nature, or with our nature. And it doesn't require all the secondary elaborations of the mind, all the thought stuff, all the. Does that help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that helps.
Follow up?
I do have a follow up on that.
Okay.
So usually, when I study about dharma, or like how I should do things, the one thing that always comes up is doing what's needed, but then doing my best at it, doing my best. And sometimes doing my best seems like I am trying hard, or I'm trying to force something, because I'm not used to doing that. So doing my best feels like that. Does that also align with attunement, or is how do I distinguish trying hard versus doing my best?
Okay, good question. The way you know that you're attuned is that you're no longer there. For example, let's say a painter's painting, and he's thinking, well, wait a minute, if I put a line here, I should put a line there. If I have this color here, I need that color there. Is the composition right? Is this subject the appropriate one? Should I be working on such a size canvas? That's trying hard, right? But then when the painter is simply painting, he goes, oh, well, here. He doesn't have to think. He's so well trained, he's so well motivated, he's so well experienced that he's able to do it without thinking at all. He just knows what to do. And for example, with coders, there are times when coding is the most horrible, I would imagine. I don't know, I'm not a coder, but are there not times, for example, when you're doing coding, it's a lot of work, it's difficult, it's tedious, it's, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to check this, I got to do this, and I'm willing to bet, and you can just tell me if it's true or false, are there times when you're coding and it just goes like magic? It just kind of flows out of your fingers. You know exactly what you're doing. You know why you're doing it. And you don't have to think about the how, because you know how to do it already. And so there's no struggle, there's no effort. It's called not doing, right?
Yeah.
Is that true by the way, for coding?
Yeah, I have experienced that with coding and with other things as well.
Okay, so then what? So then, then how much effort did that take when you were actually in it?
When I am in it, then it feels almost effortless, because, and even if effort is involved, I don't remember the effort.
Correct, because you're not really particularly there. You just do what needs to be done. You do it effortlessly.
Yeah.
And musicians, poets, writers, painters, engineers, martial artists, boxers, golfers, they all describe this state of not doing, where there's no effort. They just do what needs to be done. They hit the ball the way the ball needs to be hit. They kick the ball the way it needs to be kicked. And so there's a distinction then. Now, when someone is first starting out in this kind of work, it's very important to realize there is effort, of course, because you have to quiet your mind down and you're not used to it. You have to study books, and you don't want to, maybe in the beginning, because they're alien and foreign to you. You go, wait a minute, why would I read a book when I could just listen to it? Why do I need a book anyway? Why can't I just watch a YouTube? Well, sometimes you can watch a YouTube, and sometimes you can listen to it, but many times you cannot, because of what comes in between you and the writing is someone else's voice, or somebody else's intonation, or somebody else's interpretation, even worse. And so there's a lot of different reasons for approaching different materials differently. And if you ignore all that, if you're totally insensitive to that, then you just slow yourself down by a huge amount. And so it takes some people a while to realize that, hey, wait a minute, adults do have to make effort in this world. Everything isn't just handed to them. Everything isn't just flow. And that's natural, that's normal in the modern industrial or post-industrial world. And so it seems like these days sometimes people get freaked out because they go, oh my God, that's going to take work. And they don't understand that that's part of life. All the creatures work, but see, what makes it work is the attitude towards it. I mean, you could be working in a field, and I've done this, and it's not work at all. Or you could be working in a field and it's torture, because you're thinking, oh, I shouldn't be out here in this orchard picking oranges. I shouldn't be doing this. Somebody else should be doing this, or I should be paid more, or I want to be doing something else, or whatever. And so you could torture yourself with your mind, or you could just do it. And if everything's right, I'm not saying I enjoyed it most of the time. But looking back, there were times when you're just attuned with the way, attuned with the situation, attuned with reality, and then you drop out, and then all of a sudden everything gets done. By not doing, everything gets done. That's what it says in the Tao Te Ching. That's how they put it. It's a very important point. Thank you for asking. Is it clear? I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, it's clear. And as a follow-up, I just wanted to bring up my experience with learning any new skill. It always feels like work when I'm starting at learning the skill.
Yeah, that's why they call it work. Yeah, good.
Yeah, and once I become once I gain knowledge or practice or become a kind of an expert, then it feels effortless. It's not effortless at the start.
Correct.
So I guess not doing can happen only after going through the learning, and not at the start.
Yeah, okay, you could say that. But for some people who have cultivated, learning itself is lovely. They say, oh, a new idea, a new piece of wisdom, a new perspective. Oh, I didn't know that. And for them, that becomes joy too, right? But you're right. When I've tried to learn things in my life just to see what would happen. So when I first started to learn guitar, it was a lot of work, a huge amount of painful work, and it was, yeah. So yes, in the beginning there has to be the discipline, the effort, all the other things, the concentration. But then that goes away, and then the same thing's true with meditation. Then you realize, well, wait a minute, I've been making this difficult for myself for so long. Why did I do that? Mm-hmm. People could spend decades doing that. Mm-hmm. All right, so, okay, Good,
Yeah.
great questions, by the way. Good. Keep going.
Yeah, then I have a next question.
All right.
Cool. Yeah, so this one is from one of your tweets from Lao Tzu, and it was about listening with the spirit. And that one, I am not really sure what is listening with the spirit. Is it like the same as listening intently with like fully like not doing, basically, like listening fully and not with ego dropping out? Is it the same thing or something different?
Well, there's nuances. Now, in Zen, listening with the spirit, that's the Taoist way of putting it, right? In Zen, they say you need to absorb it to the marrow of your bones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in music, they would say, you have to get it into your soul, right? There's a lot of different metaphors for this. I don't know the context of this listening with the spirit, whether there was a larger context, because in Taoism, spirit, as in all religious traditions, has other nuances. But in general, it's kind of like that. Well, there's basically, if you do not do, okay, we're using the phrase not doing. So if you're able to not do anything and accomplish it, then by all, that's, of course, that would be the ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people aren't that simple. They make it difficult in their mind. Their mind throws up obstacles like, oh, I'd rather be doing something else, or oh, I should be doing this, or what do people think of me about this, or what if this doesn't work and I don't get paid emotionally for this, or I don't get paid spiritually for this, or some other crazy stuff, right? And so those thoughts are the reason that there's any effort involved at all, right? Once you get rid of those, there's no effort.
Got it.
Keep going.
Should I read out a tweet to give the full context?
Yeah, go ahead. That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, it's a long tweet. I'll read.
Well, it may not be necessary in this case, because if the only question is listening with the spirit, well, why don't you read the line before and the line after that line with listening with the spirit?
I'll just read like a few lines, I think.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it says, when Zhu asked about the way, Lao Tzu said, if you don't study sincerely, you won't listen to the way deeply. Listening is to convey wisdom, to foster action.
Slow down. Slow down. So this is very, very rich. So give the first sentence in this case. I didn't realize this was what you were quoting. This is very, very rich. This is Lao Tzu talking to Wen Tzu, so it's going to be good. So read the first sentence.
Okay. If you don't study sincerely, you won't listen to the way deeply.
Right. When you don't.
If you don't study sincerely,
right,
you won't listen to the way deeply.
Correct. Without sincerity, nothing happens. Right. Nothing. So you have to sincerely want to understand. People sometimes they read and they just what their goal is to have said, well, I read this book. Oh boy, I can read this book. I can get my little star on the Kindle list or something, on the Kindle badge or whatever. That's not reading. Reading is absorbing, right? You've read a book we can say I know it, right? And so if you don't listen sincerely, you're not going to get anything. Right? So keep going.
Listening is to convey wisdom, to foster action, and to bring achievement and honor.
Okay.
If it is not sincere, it is not clear, not deep, not effective.
If it's not sincere, it's not... Okay, so what happens if it's not sincere? What does Lao Tzu say? If it's not sincere, then what?
It is not clear, not deep, not effective.
There you go. It's not clear, it's not deep, it's not effective. If you're not sincere, you might as well, use the book as a doorstop. Keep going.
So the highest learning involves listening with the spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, with
Middle.
go ahead.
Go ahead. It's the next line.
Yeah, okay, so listening with the spirit or reading with the spirit or trying to understand with the spirit means to do it sincerely. Otherwise, you're wasting everybody's time, including your own. And in this life, you don't have much time. None of us do. I promise you. You'll see when you're my age. So yeah, listen with the spirit, read with the spirit, play with the spirit, love with the spirit, do everything with the spirit. In a way. I don't want to get carried away, but that's a beautiful quote. All right. Follow up on that?
Middling, yeah, middling learning involves listening with the mind. Lower learning involves listening with the ear.
Yeah. Okay, so some people just read with their minds. They don't want to understand, well, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to where I am in my stage? How can I use this? What is this good for? They don't want to do that, right? So they don't think. They just kind of read the words and say, well, I understood the sentence, so I'm good enough, right? And then what's the one for the lower? The lower is just listening with the ear. People like, people that listen to books, and they just basically they just want to say they read a book, so they put it on Audible, on the app that plays it for them. They don't care who the translator is. They don't care whether the translator is butchering the book. They don't even care about the book. They don't care about the author. They don't really care about the subject. They just want some entertainment or something. They want some noise because their brains are addicted to the noise of the screens. And so they're listening with the ear. They just, while they do the dishes, they maybe that, they miss a little part here, but it doesn't matter. They're just kind of listening just for noise in the background. It's like having background music. That's listening with the ear. So lower people listen with it. I mean, not listening at all is listening with the ear. I mean, you can ask them about that book literally 8 hours later. They'll have no idea what it was about or what it said. They may have some general idea, but they could have done that in 3 minutes instead of 3 hours. The middling reader or student studies things with the mind. And most of us are middling students. That's how we start, right? We start with the mind. We try and understand, well, why am I reading this and what is this for, da-da-da. But once you get further along, then you read with the spirit, and you're totally engaged. I mean, Borges is a perfect example. He could wrap you up good for quite a while, but that's a different kind of, that's just what we're striving for, right? Is to get to where we can just we can attune with the book, with the writer, with the thought, with the message. And then some books, and this is where Eckhart Tolle comes in, he reads the book for you. And he's literally transmitting a lot more than just words in those books, right? And in particular, I think of New Earth, he's literally transmitting energies to the readers through a recording. Now, people don't believe that's possible. Well, so what can I say? It's not only is it possible, he does it. And you can feel the influence on you if you're attuned to him and his work and what he's trying to do. And all teachers do this. They use their energies to influence students, to help students, and they transmit. The words oftentimes are just the packaging. Not in the case of Tolle, for example. They're doing something else at the same time. Now, they're not going to advertise it, but those who are attuned can register it. Shaw talks about this quite a bit, and it's an important part of learning. But no one's going to advertise it, because then you end up like that situation in India where you have 50,000 people trying to get to some saint's what do they call it when everybody goes to there and they try and touch. Everybody gets to shake her hand. Or everybody gets to, what do they call that?
I mean, they touch their feet and...
Yeah, they touch their feet or touch their hem or touch their mala or something. And then they, they get, that heals them or something like that. Well, that's something else. That's something else. And sometimes people are taken advantage of. And oftentimes it's monetized one way or the other. Look where the money goes or whatever. But other people, just let's leave that one alone. Let's just say that that's different than what we're talking about here. Okay?
Yeah.
There's no feet touching around here. No worshiping the teacher either. Right? Okay.
Got it. Yep. I have a follow-up on that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I listen to an audiobook, let's say when I'm gonna listen to The Earth in the Future from Eckhart Tolle, like along with the words, I can feel like the energy of the narrator or the speaker. But it seems like you are talking about something different.
He is the narrator. He is the narrator. He is the speaker. That's my point. That's rare.
Yeah.
That's important.
So when I listen to a sentence from, like let's say when I listen to a sentence of that book, and I get the emotional energy behind it, and I also I feel the emotional energy behind it, and I also get the word in my mind, like I understand the meaning. But it seems like you are talking about transmitting something more than that.
Yeah, it's not emotional. It's called baraka. It's called baraka. The Sufis call it baraka. It's
baraka.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it in public.
Okay.
I mean, talking about it in public serves no good purpose. People who are receptive receive.
Got it.
People who are not, better they not hear about it because they get all kinds of weird. Or they get, and you have people who go all over the world, traipsing, finding one teacher after another. They did this with disregard too, where they think that just by being there in his presence, now granted it's salutary, it's good for them, but not if it's just scattered all over the place. I mean, it's still good for them, but it's not. It doesn't lead anywhere. They just go around in circles and circles and circles, and then 20 years later they end up at Rupert Spira saying, well, why didn't anything happen, right? Well, because they were too greedy, they were too graspy, they weren't willing to make any effort, right? And they weren't willing to let go of their preconceptions. Their teacup was full. They didn't empty it first. They didn't learn that they had to start over and start like an innocent child and learn something brand new, something totally different. I'm speaking now of the Westerners, in particular Americans. And so this is a problem. We see this all the time. We see 60-year-old seekers who have been all over the world, and they've met they hit every major teacher, right? They went to such and such as ashram, such and such as ashram. They went to a talk by this, Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharshi, Osho. They just keep going, but they never understand what's actually being said. It's a form of greed, and a form of laziness, and a form of lack of discipline, and not absorbing what's being told. Now, there are some teachers that will take advantage of that, like Osho did, right? God bless him. And other people have. Because they want, the money, they want the fame, which says that they may have been woken up, but they're not very wise if they're looking for fame. Because fame is nothing but a curse. And it doesn't take a whole lot of wisdom to see that. But they want it anyway, glamour or whatever, and so it never ends well, that one. And so, but in another way, the students get the teachers they deserve, and right, and so the sincere student will settle down and say, well, wait a minute, maybe I should understand what Eckhart Tolle is saying and put it into practice before I sign up for the weekend course or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's so much, if you listen to those books, especially if you listen to them, he's narrating, he's speaking, so that's a good deal for $20 or whatever it is. I hope he doesn't mind me talking about this, using him as an example, but I think it's a good example. He's doing the best he can. Poor guy. Go ahead.
So that also means that for getting the books from, it's better to listen to audiobooks narrated by them than reading the same book, right?
Well, it depends on what's available and what the circumstances are. It's better to read the book, period. If you're on a camping trip and you don't have any batteries to charge your iPhone or whatever, or you don't want to disturb other people, or you don't want to wear earplugs or something like that, then it's better to read the book. These are all recent questions, by the way. We didn't have the technology in the past. But if you have a choice, the best is to do both at the same time to make sure you haven't missed anything.
Got it.
But yeah, so the content's important too. I'm not saying the content's not important.
Cool.
I'm just saying that in some cases, the messenger matters. Right? And people are too obtuse to even notice, right? And so they exclude themselves already. Right? It's like with David Hawkins, you know, you could read David Hawkins and get a lot there. You actually can get everything you need just by reading Hawkins. But if you got to see him lecture, that'd be really cool too. Right? So you do both. Before you go to lecture, read all the books and absorb everything you can before you get to asking the question. Otherwise, you're just like discharging your attention need, right? And God knows what other needs. All right? And I'm using living examples. I probably shouldn't. But if you go back to the 20th century, it's full of this, you know. I mean, full of people misunderstanding what's at stake here.
Yeah.
All right. Follow up or another question?
Another question.
Okay, question.
Yeah. So this is from one of your tweets by Hadrat Ali. The tweet was, "Reprove your brother by being good to him, and ward off his evil by kindness to him."
Yeah.
So how does this align with the idea of like giving out punishment when needed to get them back on track?
No, who's talking about giving out punishment when needed?
So is it like you reprove your brother by being good to him?
Yeah, how's that punishment?
It's not a punishment. Here, by being good to him can mean anything depending on the circumstance. It might mean kindness in one situation. It might mean like,
turning the other cheek. It's a Christian teaching. Yeah, if someone comes at you, you know, they're insulting, they're treating you like crap because they're, you know, in a bad mood, or they didn't get the raise they wanted, or their wife, you know, doesn't love them anymore, or whatever, they start attacking you. Well, you know the man's suffering. So rather than attack back, which you could easily do, you don't do that. You say, "Oh, sorry you're having a hard time, brother. Is there any way I can help?" Instead of insulting him back. And so you've reproved him, you've corrected him, or you've reproved him. I guess that's the best word. By your kindness, your lack of reciprocal aggression, right? You have opportunities for this all the time, right?
Yeah.
Somebody treats you like a real jerk. You're in line at the store. Somebody treats you like a real jerk. Well, if you can, and if it makes sense, be gentle with them and realize that they're they must be having a hard day and a hard life and a hard wife and all God knows what else is going behind that road rage, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you don't you don't repay that with the same thing, or you reduce to their level also, right? It's to protect yourself too, because you could wreck a whole day because you got in a fight with somebody over something stupid, you know. You don't have to just. You don't have. It takes two to fight, right? And to get down in the mud and start gouging each other's eyes out verbally or whatever. And if you don't do that, it's better for you. It's better for him, if you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Follow up or question. Follow up or another question.
Yeah. Follow up. Yeah.
Okay. Follow up.
Like at least like sometimes there are some people who just like take advantage of us when we are being good to them, or being kind to them, and they do it again and again and again.
Okay, there's nothing here where Hadrat Ali says. Hadrat Ali is not saying under all times, with all people, under all circumstances, be kind to reprove him with kindness. He doesn't say that. So our minds add, well, what about this? You know, what if you're being attacked by a crocodile, and the crocodile doesn't seem to care that you're being nice to it? Well, that's not what he's talking about. all of these things are said by reasonable men, or they wouldn't have lasted 1,500 years, right? And so what they're referring to is this, where it applies, it applies. I mean, this is taken for granted, as it says in the Tao Te Ching. Those who know do not generalize. Those who generalize do not know. So whenever you take a statement of any sort and you try and generalize it to the extremes, to the edge cases, or to even just marginally, you're just showing there's a lack of attunement, a lack of alignment with what's being said. Of course, it doesn't apply under all cases, right?
Yep.
I mean, when Jesus went into the moneylenders, right, in the temple, and they were like doing all kinds of bad stuff in the temple to other people, he got pissed off. Does that mean you should get pissed off with everybody all the time? No, that's not what he's saying. That's not what the scripture says. Anger at willful foolishness is understandable. Now, is anger necessarily the best approach? Probably not, and people should have a lot less of it. But there are times when you have to defend yourself. You have to stand up for yourself, or you have to protect your loved ones and your body. I mean, nobody's here talking about being silly or foolish. But on the other hand, people are being foolish with their entire life, right? And so again, you got to be sensitive to this stuff. Follow up?
No.
Okay.
No follow-up.
Next question.
Yeah. So this is one where, it's from one of your tweets, and it says, according to the inclinations of sentient beings, the Buddhas will appear.
Oh, this is beautiful. Yeah. According to the inclinations of sentient beings, the Buddhas will appear. Go ahead. Now, what's the question?
Yeah, so in this one, it talks about inclinations.
Yeah.
And inclination, like when I looked up a definition, it's like a natural tendency or the natural urge of the being.
Yeah.
So it sounds like someone.
And that's a translation of the. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so it sounds like someone who is already naturally inclined to the way or to the dharma, they will get the help. But what about the other people who don't have that naturally yet because of circumstance or whatever?
How does that relate to the statement, though? But so let's talk about according to. Maybe you're not understanding what it's saying. According to the inclinations of sentient beings, the Buddhas will appear. Have you ever heard of the Virgin Guadalupe? You see pictures of her in Mexican parts of town, or in Mexico, Latin America.
I've seen pictures, but what's the picture you were talking about?
You see the picture of the Virgin. She's standing on a moon. She's a peasant woman, and she was seen by a peasant in northern Mexico.
I don't think I have seen that picture yet.
Do you have any tutelaries in India where it's just like they have a regional version of Krishna, or Hanuman, or Ganesh? That was the inclinations of people, right? They saw deities in forms of elephants, and
things like that.
They saw deities in forms of elephants. And go ahead. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I've seen that. Yeah, for the Indian gods. Yeah.
And the same thing's true for the Latin American saints, or even for the American saints, and sometimes even UFOs, right? Not UFOs, but aliens. I mean, not to equate the two necessarily. I don't know enough about the latter. But according to the inclinations of sentient beings, the Buddhas will appear. The Buddhas, right? So depending on your culture, depending on your religion, depending on your epoch, depending on your time, depending on your predispositions, the Buddhas will appear according to your need, right? For some it's angels. For For others, it's other spirits, tutelaries. For some, it's an elephant with a Ganesh. For others, it's a monkey, Hanuman. For others, it's and I'm not equating any of these. I don't want to get in trouble or anything like that. But the point is that according to the inclinations of sentient beings, the Buddhas will appear. So the Buddha appears to Buddhists, right? Angels appear to Christians and Muslims. Jinns appear to Muslims sometimes, I guess. I don't know. I'm not an authority. And the Catholics have their saints. And the Protestants have their aliens. No, I'm joking. I don't know what but the Buddhas appear according to your needs. They don't appear according to some abstract, absolute. That's not how things work. So this may be an important point. Thank you for bringing it up. But so is that perfectly clear? So let me tell you a story, right? So let me tell you a story. I don't know when it was, but the Catholic Church has a huge presence in Latin America. And one day, centuries ago, a peasant in some part of Mexico, again, I don't know the details, I think it was somewhere towards the north, I don't know, a very devout man, a very devout Catholic or a woman, saw a vision of the Virgin Mary, but she was dressed like a Mexican. She looked like a Mexican. Of course. Why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she? It's a vision, right? So according to the inclinations of sentient beings, the Buddhas will appear. So that's the example that I use for now. Does that make perfect sense now? Or are there questions?
Hello.
Yes. Does that make perfect sense?
Yeah. I lost you there for a little bit at the end, but I get that, and I'll watch that in the.
Okay, so what was I trying to say? I was trying to say that depending on your culture, your religion, depending on your the epoch in which you live, right? I mean, people don't see saints the way they used to, right? In modern industrialized ways. Instead, they imagine little dwarves with DMT, poor things, right? That's a very impoverished, by the way. But so is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah.
All right, good.
I have another question. And this one is from Learning How to Learn.
Good.
By Risha. So here he's talking about attitudes of disciples, and he's like basically mentioning about the continuum of serving and being served. I'll read out the exact the lines.
Thank you.
To give more context. Yeah. So here basically he's talking about how when someone learns about the Sufi knowledge or the Sufi ideas and comes into contact with that, how they react. So he says the right attitude for people is such people never clamor first of all to be received, seen, taught, and so on. They cultivate a group of people, spread this knowledge as best as they can, and then they ask whether they should come or whether someone might visit them. They are in fact in a condition to learn and to serve as well as to be served. This establishes the continuum of serving and being served.
Yeah. What's the question?
Yeah, but when even now when I read about the Dharma or when I get the ideas, I never talk about with other people because I feel that I'm not ready.
Well, if you run into a good book or something that was very, very useful that helps you. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, what comes to mind at the moment was the Four Agreements, right? Why wouldn't you share that book with somebody else? I mean, why wouldn't you?
So anything that is so what I have seen is if someone is asking for help or for advice, then I can tell them. But otherwise, if I tell them, then they will just they don't listen, and that's why I don't.
Are you saying that no one would listen to anything under any circumstances forever and ever? No, that's not what you're saying. So maybe you're
And that
approaching
would
the
be
wrong people. I wouldn't give the Four Agreements. I would recommend, you know, A New Earth or what is it? You know, a book by Spira or something like that. I wouldn't recommend it to just anybody. It'd have to be somebody who, you know, showed some interest, or maybe they're in trouble, right? Or maybe they want to get
yeah.
ahead. I mean, you don't give a book on math to someone who's only interested in music. Well, maybe you might, but I mean, you don't give a book on horticulture to someone who's only into artificial intelligence. I mean, you got to show some discernment here, right? No one's
Yeah.
being stupid, all
Yeah.
right? I promise you this. Idris Shah's not stupid. That much I can tell you with great confidence. So nobody's being saying idiotic things. If it sounds idiotic, then you have to go back to yourself and say, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm being idiotic. Maybe I'm trying to overgeneralize.
Hmm.
Or maybe I'm being too concrete, right? Or maybe I'm not understanding enough, or maybe I don't have the background information, or maybe there was something in another book that I needed so to put this together, right? And so just you could be confident that nothing stupid's being said by any of these folks.
Hmm. Okay.
All
Got
right?
it.
So you don't have
Yeah.
to worry about that part. You have to worry about yourself.
Okay.
And the thing is, so look, they don't need to be seen. They don't need to be advertised. They don't need to be glorified. They don't need to be. They're not virtue signaling. They're not, you know, trying to promote themselves. They're not attention whores. They're not, you know, they're not. They're just balanced people. Now, I was going to free associate with that to something else, which well, I probably shouldn't right now. Any other questions before we stop?
I have just one last question.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah, so this one is again from your tweet, and I don't think I understand it clearly. The
All right,
tweet was again from Hadrat Ali,
all right.
and it says, "It is easier to leave off wrongdoing than to seek assistance."
What's the question? It is easier
So
to leave off wrongdoing than to seek assistance. Go ahead.
yeah, so when I read that, I thought it meant that it's better to not to just give up wrongdoing than to do it and then later ask for help to fix something.
Why would you
Um,
ask help to
but
fix that if it's already gone? I don't understand. Help me understand.
yeah, so I don't understand clearly what it meant.
Okay, well, let's go through it. It said, it is easier to leave off wrongdoing than to seek assistance. Is that the whole quote?
Hmm. Yeah, that's the whole quote.
All right. So, what does the first part mean?
It is easier to leave off wrongdoing.
What does leave off wrongdoing mean?
It means first to understand that what I'm doing is wrong, and then secondly to give up on it because I know it's wrong.
Where does it say anything about understanding wrongdoing? It just says it's easier to leave. What does leave off wrongdoing mean? Just what does leave off? See, you're inserting things, right? And this is very important because, especially with the Sufi literature, there's a tendency for people to insert things that aren't there. And then they critique it based on what they've inserted into what was never there in the first place. So what does leave off wrongdoing mean? It means don't do things that are wrong. Uh, let's say you're watching, you're obsessed with porn or with video games, and you know it's hurting your life.
Hmm.
All right. So what would leave off wrongdoing mean?
To basically stop doing things
Yeah,
that
stop
are
it. Just stop it.
hurting you.
Stop doing it.
Hmm.
Stop looking at porn.
Hmm. But then it also requires understanding to understand what is actually wrong for me. Sometimes the
But see, but
things
that's
I
not what
do,
he's talking about in this quote. You're adding that element to this, right? He doesn't say anything
yeah.
about understanding. It's obvious. I mean, certain things people know, right? They don't need to understand why eating too much is bad for them. They don't need to understand why incessant porn or excessive video games or, you know, God knows, gambling, whatever you want, drinking, drugs, obsessing about this. We don't need to discuss that. That's obvious, right?
Hmm.
Now, if there's something you don't know if it's wrong or right, which is rare,
Hmm.
very rare, then maybe this a statement wouldn't apply. But he's talking about just it's easier to leave off wrongdoing, to not do something wrong, than to go seek a help for it.
Got it.
So think how many things people could solve on their own if they just stopped doing it. It's just easier. That's all. That's all. His only statement.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, but the other point, which is vital, there's a vital point. Most of the times when people don't understand something, it's because they've added something to it, or they haven't noticed something that's there. So these two elements, putting something in that's not there, that's coming from your own mind. And this is why it takes Doris Lessing, one of the greatest writers, and my favorite writer, right? This wonderful writer from, oh man, in English. She said she didn't learn how to read till she was 60. Or something like that, something outrageous. And I didn't know what she meant until I learned that how guilty I was. We don't read. What we do is we interpret using our own mind to insert stuff in there, right? And so we're not really reading the author. We're reading our own mind mixed with the author in some kind of mangled mess. And so what the Sufis do brilliantly is try and make this crystal clear to anybody that look, in order to learn, you have to see what's there. You can't add stuff, which the mind does automatically and unconsciously, so I'm glad you brought this up, right? And you can't leave things out, which the mind does automatically and unconsciously. Or the mind takes something and makes it into something ridiculous, right? Like, let's say, you should always say please and thank you. Well, what about if you're falling off a cliff and you don't have time to say please to the man who's holding a hand out to you? What about then? That's how the mind works, right? It's craziness, right? And so look out for those things and watch them in other people too. It's like the what about, and it's the sign of someone who's not fully sincere yet. And it's an almost automatic reaction for intelligent people of a certain level of intelligence to talk about what about this or what about that, the edge cases, the extreme cases, or cases where it doesn't even apply, right? And so I wish I had better examples, but just pay attention and you're going to start to see them everywhere, especially among men. I see it more in men than women. Women are more receptive, and so with men there's a certain they don't want to be receptive, they want to be assertive. And they want to be, and as we know from the I Ching and from the Tao Te Ching and from everything else, there has to be a balance between the receptive and the creative. There's no creative without the receptive, and there's no receptive. You need them both. Is what I'm saying. So be on guard for that, and watch it. You'll learn from everybody. All right, sir. Anything else?
Got it. No, that was it.
I don't know that.
All right, sir. Take good care, and happy reading.